I met this man through his theater company known as the Wayward Artist. And now we get to speak with Pastor Craig Tyrl, not only about the Wayward Artist and its resurgence, but also his parish, the Irvine United Congregational Church. Greg, it is always great to see you, my friend.
Awesome to be here, truly.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. Like the first time, so the first show that you guys did when the Wayward resurfaced was Godspell, and it was at your parish. And I'm looking at the address, and I was like, "This is really familiar. Why do I know this address so well?" And it turns out you're literally down the street from one of our sister parishes, which is St. Paul's Greek Orthodox Church. And I was like, "Oh, okay, so this is going to be an easy place to find."
Yeah,
Yeah,
not down the street. Actually, you're our
literally,
neighbor,
literally next door. Yeah.
literally next door.
Yeah, they are under the Patriarch of Constantinople. I'm under the Patriarch of Antioch, but we are in full communion with each other. So I was like, oh, this is going to be the easiest find of all. I didn't even have to struggle to find your parish. Yeah. Uh, we met first through the Wayward, and it was the very first show I covered for you guys over there was Bird Brain. And that
Hmm.
was a fun, great family show that I think it was the first thing I noticed was some kid actually put down his iPad to pay attention to what was going on. And I was like, all right, this show's
Yeah.
going to be a hit, if you can get the kid to put the computer down. Yeah. Take us back a
Uh,
little bit through how you started the Wayward.
okay, so we are. I went to graduate school, got my MFA in acting and directing at Cal State Fullerton, and when I graduated, group of us, really a partner, Kristen Campbell, who's a professional scenic designer. We just wanted to tell the stories that we wanted to tell. I have a bit of a business background, so the actual kind of small business of running a theater company didn't scare me too bad. And I just thought between Kristen and I and some of our classmates that we'd all gone to graduate school together, that we could produce professional level, engaging theater. And we had a little tiny theater book that said how to start a theater company, and we kind of followed that blueprint, and that was all at the beginning of 2017. We officially incorporated in August of 2017, and we launched our first season with Godspell, interestingly, in 2018, and we've been producing theater ever since. So we're in the middle right now of figuring out season 9 at the Wayward Artist. I can't believe it. We may make it to the 10-year mark, which for theater company, it's not an easy business for sure.
Especially, when cinema became the official rival and people are like, oh, who's going to go to the theater when you can go to the movies or vice versa? And New York looked at it,
Yeah.
was like, who's going to go to the movies when you can see live performers? Well, it was a difference between a dollar and a nickel. The nickel won at that point.
And then COVID did not help at all when, you know, that I think people really started streaming at home. And now that you can get sort of immediate release Hollywood via streaming services, yeah, it's been a challenge.
But some of it also feels disposable. Like I've seen a lot of films at home and in the last couple of years, and the reason why I expanded into live theater was that movies felt disposable. There wasn't something that left a lasting impression. It's like I watched it
Yeah.
or it was in the background or whatever it is. I said, so let's give live theater a shot. These people have one go. There's no second take. If something gets flubbed, they just keep moving on with it. And here we go. And, I've been covering live theater now for, my God, a year and a half.
That's what gives me hope ultimately for the future and kind of this world where AI is kind of changing everything. Uh, there is no substitute for live theater, and there is no substitute yet for, a live performer on stage, the special encounter and energy exchange that happens with a live audience. And, you know, as long as that's still part of the human experience, I have hope for the future of theater because, so much of reality is about disconnecting from humanity and each other. So it's important, more important now than ever, I think.
Right. And, with the Wayward having that brief window of shutting down for a little while, and I'm thrilled that you found a new home. You're also a pastor. And for people that don't know, we are on the opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to theology. I come from an apostolic tradition, church fathers, apostolic fathers, where it says in the book of Acts they were called Christian in Antioch. That's literally where where my parish started. You are on the evangelical side. You are also on the progressive side. I tend to be a little bit more conservative in my views, but that does not take away from anything where you and I can be friends and actually break bread and sit at the same table together. And I think that is something we need. The reason why I'm bringing this up is to address, because so many people are like, if you don't agree with me 100% down the list, we can't be friends. And I don't see how that works, because we are both human beings and we're both sharing a human experience, but your lived experience is different than mine. And only those exchange of ideas can we learn to understand, all right, I might not agree with this perspective, but I see where it's coming from. You might not agree with this perspective, but you see where I'm coming from. And we can meet in the middle on this and actually be civilized people.
I couldn't agree more with you. That's why I was really excited to connect at Godspell, and then to take you up on this invitation to come on to the podcast is solely for that. Even within the United Church of Christ, which I'm a member of, we're about a little over 700,000 members, 4,000 plus churches. I just recently got back from our General Synod, which is an annual gathering every 3 years of the entire national church. And there's within the UCC, there's a third would be called progressive, third kind of moderate, third conservative, kind of mirroring society. But the progressive voices are probably the strongest and the loudest of the UCC. And I got to attend a really wonderful luncheon where the voices of the conservative voices in our own congregation were kind of expressing their own kind of hurt and sense of marginalization. And so not just within the UCC, but kind of post-election, if red and blue don't find a way to start listening and connecting and kind of recognizing shared humanity, I think we're headed into some kind of dangerous places. And I do feel, even with the Orthodox, there's probably much more that we are in alignment again with, whether it's my church or even with Wayward in terms of the mission of the theater company, sort of in alignment with our churches, helping those that are marginalized, those that society is overlooking, the sick, the outcast, the destitute, the poor and the hungry and the sick. And, I just believe there's a lot of shared opportunity to reconnect and have conversation. We've got a play coming up in November called The Christians. It's a story of a pastor of a megachurch who sort of has a crisis of faith, kind of rethinks his thoughts on heaven and hell, and preaches a powerful sermon, kind of changes the direction of this megachurch. And there's quite a bit of fallout for it. But my hope is in producing that play here that invitations can be extended, talkbacks following the service can happen, and red and blue, conservative and liberal, progressive, and all the rest, Christians and people of good faith can find space. Thank you to theater making that possible, to have a conversation and listen, talk about our theologies in ways where we, don't want to harm each other, but love each other.
I often say when you mix red and blue together, you get purple. And with the way the political system is at this point, we're all left bruised. So it's fitting that we want to have these conversations. You have this business background. You decide to start the Wayward. At one point, you had told me that you almost became a Catholic priest, and then you can
started. I sure did.
Yeah. So you started at seminary.
Yeah. You want that quick story?
Sure, please.
So I philosophy undergrad in New Jersey, and I was Catholic and very active in sort of the Newman Club and Catholic collegiate life. By the time I graduated, I was convinced that I wanted to live as an Augustinian friar. So when I graduated, I immediately enrolled in a master's program at Villanova, joined the Augustinians as an associate, which is their kind of first initial steps in their formation process, and did exactly that for 2 years. But then when I graduated, I was scheduled to be shipped off to DC to begin the next formation process and take simple vows. And it just, it was 24. I was figuring myself out and just came to realize a lot of that was just me trying to figure myself out. But I got a wonderful progressive education, Catholic theology education, at Villanova. The new Pope was from Villanova and also Augustinian. So, and it does feel a little kind of full circle, but at 24, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my voice. At 53 now, I found my voice and have something to say and sort of returned to ministry. And I do look through the lens and kind of recognize God's gentle guiding hand cooperating and collaborating with me in this whole journey. But yeah, a little bit full circle.
And how did you get back into ministry? Like, what was the catalyst to say, all right, it's time for me to go this direction?
So, theater completely transformed my life. In terms of finding my voice, it was really theater that made that transformation possible. I was 30 years old before I took my first singing, acting, dancing class. That was all as a man in my 30s at Saddleback College, and I was working full time in restaurant management, and the hard work of working in restaurants, just feeling I didn't want this to be the rest of my life, and I always wanted. I had a little inkling or gentle whisper in my heart that was kind of interested in performance, and so I just stuck with it through my whole 30s, doing my first show and taking classes wherever I could fit them into my schedule. And slowly but surely, I got better. And, I did a lot of wrestling with, am I good enough? Did I start when I was too old? Am I talented enough? How will I ever pay for myself? But I did stick with it. And at a pivotal time, I got cast in the lead of a musical that was directed, choreographed, and musical directed by faculty members at Cal State Fullerton. And at the end of that show, they all encouraged me to apply to graduate school. So at 40, I went back to graduate school again and got my MFA in acting and directing. Never worked another day in my life in restaurants. Discovered, I have a real passion for teaching, probably more than anything else. And kind of just gave back. At the heart of my teaching method or pedagogy is helping people accept and affirm their creative voice. And through kind of this process that transformed me, I just basically give that back now. And seeing the transformation in young artists as they find their voice and put themselves out in the world in kind of transformational ways. It's really some of the most sacred work that I do. But then as I got into my 50s, I began to realize it's not just theater, the approach, the transformational experience. It extends beyond just artists into human beings. And I came to realize that my skills as a teacher, as an ensemble builder, as a storyteller, and just kind of a lover of creative expression is actually well suited for ministry. So I took a leap of faith almost 3 years ago when this opportunity came up at my long-term church where I've been a member for over 15 years, that I'd step into this role as administrative pastor. And, and a year into that, I thought, okay, I think I am ready to pursue ordination. And so I've been working on that for the last 2 years, hopefully done with the requirements by this December. But in ways marvelous, magical, and providential, it's all coming together in a way now that I get to take my love of theater and my love of ministry and actually how do they go together. When I took the job, you mentioned earlier that Wayward for a second, we had closed it down and thought we were at an end. And part of that was because when I went into ministry, I thought that I had to leave theater behind, and because I couldn't juggle, the full-time job on top of the full-time job. But of late, and this last year particularly, I come to realize I don't actually have to give up theater. I just need to integrate it into what I feel my calling is and my sense of own ministry. And so I pinched myself, Robert. I've got a good life and can't believe the blessings I've been afforded in this lifetime.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that. And if you will have me at your ordination, I would love to come and celebrate with you.
You're invited. Invited.
Yeah, and here's also the fun part. The old theater only sat about 65 people, and parking was a little difficult. Now we have ample parking, far more comfortable seats, and the pulpit where it's just easier to transition into a stage and perform multiple shows. Godspell, you did a wonderful job with, and the young man who played Jesus in Godspell, his name escapes me at the moment, so please forgive me. But he did a tremendous.
Miranda.
Yes, thank you. He did a tremendous job, and his performance wasn't, like I had seen the movie a long time ago, and it was very hippie-ish and very. I was just like, it's not my scene. But the way he presented himself was just full of compassion, and that's the way he took on the role. And it seems like that's the type of person that he is, or he's just a wonderful actor and a real jerk in real life, and he can just bring that out of him for the stage. No, I'm teasing. Yeah. Was Godspell chosen because it opened the Wayward, 9 years ago, and now here we are 9 years later in a new home, and that's why it's kind of the resurgence of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's got special significance for me. So this was my fourth time directing Godspell. It was the first show I ever directed where I realized, oh my goodness, this is where my artistic passion is. It's actually not in acting, it's in directing. And then I directed it again as a collegiate production that got invited to go to the Kennedy Center. And then so when we launched Wayward, it just felt like the right show to do to launch the company. And then that we came here now at the church, it felt right to do it again. But this one was new. I took a lot of liberties in terms of trying to update it for 2025. So it was a reinvention in a way that the other three were not. But it will always hold a very special place in my heart.
And you guys did a tremendous job with it. I was so thrilled to see that performance. And now here we are, from lighthearted with Godspell to The Christian, which is a heavier show, shall we say. I haven't seen it yet, but I've read the description of what's to come and what a bit to expect. There's going to be some surprises, obviously, because I didn't want too many spoilers to ruin my experience. What made you decide this to be the next show? I believe November 13th is opening night.
Yeah. So when Phoenix emerged from the ashes, we had some limited funds. We didn't, we closed down in the black, so there was some funds, limited funds that were still in the bank account, and the cost of theater is it's not cheap. And at Wayward, we have committed from the very beginning, and we'll never change on this, that artists deserve to be paid for their work. And although we can't pay equity Broadway salaries, we do believe that all artists need to be paid. So producing theater where all artists get paid is expensive. So in picking the shows to kind of soft relaunch for this year, Godspell, in terms of musicals, we just did it with those 4 benches. And, the actors brought in their own costumes. And so the money there was spent on royalties and actors. Now, The Christians, what's great about the play is that it unfolds as a service. The dramatic structure is a worship service. So, there's no better ideal place than a church to produce this play. So there's significant cost savings there. The play calls for a choir. So we have a choir that's willing and interested to participate in the play. It's like if you went to a church service and then in the middle of the church service, some unexpected, serious, heavy drama amongst the members and staff and family of church happened right before your eyes. What would that be like? That's the Christians.
So almost like Tony and Tina's wedding, just more
A
serious.
little bit, a little bit. Yeah, it's it does have an immersive quality.
So long as communion wafers don't go flying, we'll be all right.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm very interested in seeing this. The Wayward has always been good to me. You've always been extremely kind to me and very welcoming, and I want to thank you for that. You and Greg Holland have always been great, and your shows are either family friendly or intriguing, and you've somehow found the balance. Like, hey, this one's going to be for the kids, bring them. Hey, this one's a little more adult. Maybe leave the kids at home for this one. And you've been respectful of the audience as well. It hasn't been a surprise that like, oh, wait a minute, this is going to be shocking, and you didn't warn them ahead of time, and they brought a 5-year-old.
Right.
Yeah. Has that always been the consciousness of the Wayward and getting that done in that regard to respect the audience?
If we did have a brand, we've never shied away from edgy work or adult themed work, language, sexual content. I think the biggest compliment, most consistent feedback from our audience is that all our plays make you think, and so or I'll put it this way: many of our shows, the majority of our shows, except for TYA, Theater with Young Audiences, I would say probably are R-rated, and so working through that now in the church is something that is still evolving in process. I think I'm going to test it in 2026. There's a play called What Every Girl Should Know. And it would get its R rating, and but we are Wayward. We are still our own 501c3 nonprofit, and I don't know. I think in some ways the churches or sanctuary is the right place. Why should we be scared of adult language or strong sexual content in a sanctuary? God's not prude in my book, in my world view.
So this begs the question: how do you keep the two 501c separate? Because one is the church itself, and the other one is a theater company. And you want to make sure you got to be careful with the crossover at that point.
Yeah. So the Wayward, as its own nonprofit, has its own board, and it's managed by its board of directors, and then has a memorandum of understanding worked out with the church. In some ways, you could think of IUCC as our landlord, but with some exceptions to make sure we never offend each other.
Yeah, because we got to find that balance and make sure, because you want to be on the up and up with everything.
Yeah. But being on the progressive side of things here at IUCC, I think we can push the envelope a little more than you might find at a more conservative space.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see what's coming next for 2026, because the year's almost over. I mean, we're in September. I can't believe that the year's almost out.
I know.
Yeah, and the show's going to be in November. What's 2026 looking like? Because because this is, like you said, kind of a soft reopen.
Yeah,
so it seems like a half season at this point.
I'll throw out some things that are kind of on the table. There's a tension between Jesus Christ Superstar and Joseph and the Amazing Multicolored Dreamcoat, both Andrew Lloyd Webber plays. Joseph is a guilty pleasure of mine. I love that show. I just love that show. And I'm not the biggest fan of Jesus Christ Superstar. Um, and it's got some needs, some costly needs, and but there's some strong encouragement to go that route. So there's that play I just meant, what every girl should know. I think that's going to happen. We're bringing back a amazing group of individuals called the Black Legacy Project. They'll be here in February. It's they basically kind of tell Black history, the African American experience, but through song and storytelling, and they're amazing musicians. We've got a Arts for Activism 6-week course that's going to happen. That'll start in January. We're going to do a youth theater camp during summer. And then my friend Craig Holland is, we're going to bring back theater for young audiences. That's actually a genre that I've never directed in all the things I've directed, that I kind of want to get my hands on. I just love a space where kids are fully engaged, laughing, and kind of, where the fourth wall is basically non-existent, and they're laughing, and both actors and the kids. So that's floating around there in the mix too.
That's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that the ideas are floating. Like you, I'm not a big fan of Jesus Christ Superstar, only because there's no real resolution.
Yeah, and then not that I have anything against rock operas, but God, I mean, you've got to have the most amazing voices, and if you're anything but an amazing voice, it can quickly turn into sort of unpleasant listening for. It is short, but we'll see. Though, I've never, I mean, part of the fun of directing is wrapping your creative self around something new, and I do like finding ways to tell stories for 2025, and it is still the Jesus story. So we'll see.
Is there any story that you're like, let's say you had the budget, like you had Segerstrom budget, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That, like, all right, if I have Segerstrom budget, this is the exact show that I want to put on.
In my, ooh, oh, then I would be Come From Away, Cabaret, Fun Home. Those are kind of on my dream list of shows that I want to direct.
I think you have the space for Cabaret. It's just the costuming
I
that
think
might be
so
the issue.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the where to go. Is that too edgy for? Oh, a friend of mine had just seen the Spring Awakening at the Chance. I do like that show. I like the kind of raw Romeo and Juliet sort of sexual awakening, Spring Awakening. And I was saying, hey, we can do that here. And I did get a sort of a look of incredulity. Here? The church? I'm like, yeah. But
it is a very heavy show.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that happening. So, with the church itself, I know you have your services on Sunday. We got to make sure for people that want to come visit and know that they are welcome. I believe the times are 9:30 and 11:15 a.m. So you do have the 2 morning services. Are there also midweek services?
There's midweek activities for Tuesday, Bible study, got a prayer group, dream group. Our 9:30 service on Sunday is the larger attended service. It's where the vast majority of members attend. Probably on average about 80 to 100 members. The 11:15 is very small, kind of a more contemporary style service. On average, maybe 10 to 15 people.
And it's the same message though for both services. It's not like a completely different service.
Yeah, most of the time, yeah.
Yeah, and you do have youth programs. You do have a preschool. So, families are welcome. It's not just for artists only.
Always.
Yeah. You know,
Oh yeah, no, again.
because there are some places like, I've seen some mega churches where I just looked at it and I was like, this is a stage performance. This isn't church. And from my experience with you is that you have opened the doors not only to artists and to people that feel like there is no place for them, but you're still also open to families, and it's this blend. It's not, it's one of those things where, come as you are, but don't stay as you are because you want the transformative experience of the church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably what's kind of most. I've got an idea in my head that's been floating around for some time, and right now I'm calling it the Gospel Project. I'm working on a grant for it, and it at its proposal really is to explore what happens when you take professional artists and actors and musicians and dancers and collaborate with them, with clergy and spiritual practice and sacred ritual. What would a worship service look like with that kind of collaboration? And that's probably what I'm most excited about for 2026. But that's not really Wayward. That's that line between Pastor Craig and artistic director Craig. You know,
Well, the church did fund the
something I
arts. So
definitely want to explore. What's that?
I said the church did always fund the arts.
Yeah, and you're so well. I mean, again, if you go back to the Middle Ages and liturgical drama, and the church has got actually wonderful history, not just of drama and also in playfulness and irreverence and all sorts of theatrical ways of recognizing the sacred power of storytelling. I mean, yeah,
Well,
fundamentally, that's what we're doing. Any Christian community is we are telling the Jesus story, you know, to our communities for the day, but it's a story that began over 2 millennia ago.
and we're still going strong 2,500 years later,
Yeah.
or 2,025 years later. Sorry. Uh, what would you like to tell people that are hesitant to attend your parish because they felt ostracized or shamed or pushed out of their old previous denominations?
Okay, so our catchphrase is at IUCC. It doesn't matter where you are on your faith journey, you are welcome here. The good example. So the cast of Godspell, the 2 Sundays before we opened, came and basically led worship. I led them. I crafted the worship service that Sunday, um, and not only did they get to sing, but many of them kind of shared little testimonials. And if I had to characterize them in some ways, those voices were, those that had been hurt or harmed in some way. And so there was a gratitude that was expressed that here they are in a church able to express their point of view without any kind of fear of shame or retribution, I think the big stumbling block that all Christian communities have to wrestle with is what do you do with the LGBTQ experience? So there were those that had left the church because they had felt unwelcome there in that regard. And some were, agnostic, maybe atheist at best. But what was sacred, and I think sort of testimony of who we are at IUCC is we were grateful. We found the sacred. We were blessed by the fact that we just got to hear from your personal experience that you lean towards the agnostic or atheistic side of things. You never thought you'd step in church again because, your community and experience weren't affirmed in some ways. Or that, you came out of a tradition that, ostracized you for some reason. It's in hearing of the experience that I think IUCC recognizes as God's speaking and God's continued way of speaking in this world. It's through others and their own personal experience. And whenever we're kind of honest and vulnerable about who we are in this world and who we are in our authentic selves, that's a miracle in my book.
It definitely does open the door, though. Yeah, and unlocking that door is probably one of the more important things. Yeah. And with the Wayward having come back and now it is in a church, what would you like to tell the clientele that are hesitant to go, should I really see this show in a church? How reserved should I be? What if it's a comedy, or what if it's a dark comedy? Is it appropriate to laugh? Do I need to close myself off to certain things? Like, what would you like to tell the audience members coming to a performance?
That it's definitely come up. I'm sure it's going to continue to come up, and I'm sure, at times people are going to be vocal about that. I guess the solution to it is trying to be, as an organization, as clear as we can be in terms of our communication, whether it's through email blast or from the curtain call speech, to sort of address that head on, and emphasizing in some ways the power of storytelling as a sacred act. I think if you can recognize the sacred act of creation and collaboration and storytelling, that might be able to forgive things. And then, as I tell my students, you got to be an informed audience member. You've got to know the play that you're seeing and know the content and be aware of what to expect when you go in. And so, we've got to allow room for taste as well. But it was interesting, with Godspell, I saw a new audience emerging. Yes, our faithful Wayward audience was there. There are a lot of new people. And so I saw kind of the birth of a new audience emerging, and I'll be interested to see whether that continues with the Christians. I know key to the marketing efforts of part of the Christians is, inviting other churches. I really do want to hold talkbacks after each church and hopefully get other clergy from different denominational threads to maybe facilitate those conversations and get members from diverse theological and ecclesial backgrounds invited here and coming here. In sake, for sake of ecumenical reasons.
Well, there are 8 churches on your block, so I think that would be pretty easy just to go to the door.
Yeah, the first R-rated play that we bring in here, that'll be testing some waters for sure.
Well, let's remind everybody, for the Wayward Artist, the website is thewaywardartist.org. And for the Irvine United Congregational Church, it's IUCC.org. Services Sunday at 9:30 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. The next show coming to the Wayward, I was close. I said November 13th. It's Friday, November 14th at 7 p.m. It is The Christians, which you are directing, and that runs through just prior to Thanksgiving to Sunday, November 23rd. Greg, it is always a pleasure to catch up with you. We got to get together, for lunch in the next week or two. And, I'm always happy to chat with you.
Love your voice, by the way, in terms of, sound, and you've got the perfect voice to hear over the radio.
Thank you.
Thank you. Real pleasure. And thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. And, I want to open up the dialogue and remind people that we are far more purple than red or blue, and that politics doesn't need to be involved. Like, I'll give a quick story. If you remember during 2020, when they said, if your neighbors have more than 6 people over, call the cops. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. There is a very ancient Assyrian proverb, and this is a 6,500-year-old proverb. It is better to have a close neighbor than a distant brother. All right. And there is no reason for us to not be that close neighbor when we have the chance to be.
Amen.
So, Craig, thank you so much. And I will definitely see you soon.